Okay, so we are in it, the second part of 28 years later. Hopefully, I've got out of the habit of saying 28 weeks later, like me and a bunch of other people have been doing, just checking my mic settings and making sure everything's good because I just did a check. I want to give a review before I go into the other reviews I like to live stream and watch for the purposes of just being authentic and giving my own 2 cents before, you know, I look at other people's critiques. So, the first one people have said that it's not, the first one was not really good, and a lot of people didn't want to state why. They just wanted to say it for the sake of joining that negative bandwagon that always, for 2025, they have to say shit like 2025 was a terrible year when it's not true. They said all kind of things about how they didn't like it, but some just said they didn't like it. And pardon my hair, I just woke up. I didn't feel like doing my hair for this. Um, you can see I got the Resident Evil shirt, so it kind of fits the theme of survival horror. But personally, I liked the first 28 years later. I will say that the second one doesn't have as much story as the first part, because the first part is all about Spike doing his first hunt. Not to compare that with Avatar, but Avatar, they have their the Na'vi have their first hunt, and when they have to become hunters. So this is, and they shoot with bows and arrows. So kind of like I'm sorry, Spike. He learns to shoot with bow. He shoots with bow and arrows too, because arrows are quiet. Because apparently, any type of gunfire, like guns, bullets will alert the infected. And I like how they call them the infected instead of like zombies or whatever, because everybody mistakenly calls them zombies, and they're not zombies. They are simply infected. Not much to know about the virus, but like I was saying, the first movie is more story because it's got Spike learning to his first hunt. He has to go with his dad. His mom doesn't originally approve because of the simple fact that I had to make sure my door's locked. His mom didn't approve because she said he's just a baby, but the dad takes him anyway. And the mom is, suffering from some kind of, I think she has brain cancer or something. I originally thought it was like Alzheimer's disease, but she did look kind of young to even get Alzheimer's disease, so I was thinking maybe it was dementia or something. Turns out it was like brain cancer, and there was just no cure, as Spike learns from the doctor later on. And I think his name is Dr. Kelson. He's seen as a crazy guy because at the beginning of the first movie, during that first 20 minutes, Spike asks about him when they see him, and then his dad, played by Aaron Taylor Joy, tells him that he don't go near him, Spike, and he tells him the story of how his friends, they were all hunting, and they saw him and they were instantly ran away because he waved casually at them, because that just shows the doctor's being kind, but they think he's creepy because he's wearing iodine or some kind of makeup that makes him look orange, like the president. But also, and he's got his own reasons for that. The Dr. Kelson, I think his name is. And if I look at IMDb, I didn't have it loaded on my end, but if I go into and I should have done this already, but let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, and we can also look at Fandango. Not trying to buy tickets, but we can see I've had some other tabs open. My bad. Go ahead and I can't. Oh, they're showing it on Peacock. That's why. Okay. I was like, why are they showing the black phone too? So here's the cast. We got all the Jimmies, and that's from the first movie. Dr. Kelson, played by Ralph Fiennes. He played Voldemort in Harry Potter franchise, in the Harry Potter series. And so, just as a quick recap, you got Jack O'Connor, Mr. Wemmick from last year's Sinners playing as Soul Jimmy Crystal. Jimmy Crystal was from the beginning of the first movie, the first part that came out last year, where he escapes. He sees his dad become infected, but before that, his dad puts him under in this underneath the floor type of area where he escapes through. And you see that the cross he's carrying it upside down, or he's carrying it by the necklace part, and you can see it's upside down, and the camera kind of stays on that for a bit, for like 2 seconds, and you're wondering why. Because, and I'm going to get more into that in my review for the Bone Temple, but know that Jimmy's going to be important later. He's mentioned in the first bit, because, once again, Spike's dad, played by, let me see if I could bring up the actual, the first one. Spike's dad is played by Aaron Taylor-Joy. He tells him how there's this group of like a cult group that's been torturing people and leaving them to die pretty much, and they become infected, and they but it's not really shown a lot, And of course, you see him at the end of it when they do that whole Power Ranger stunt, when they help Spike out, when he goes off on his own again. He delivers the baby to the compound he lived in, but then he goes on his own for whatever reason, and he's cooking something, and the infected find him, and Spike shoots a few with a few arrows, but he's about to get got. But then the Power Rangers show up. And I say that because in the first movie, Spike had a Power Rangers action figure. And the way that these Jimmies, this cult of Jimmies, is portrayed is kind of Power Ranger-like, based off of the old Jimmy from Jimmy Savile, who was a media personality and DJ in the UK, but he was later on found out that he had committed several sexual acts, particularly on minors, whatever the UK's minor age is. So sexual abuse by several right here. It's a whole scandal, but he was kind of like a Mr. Rogers in a way for the UK, because the 28 Days franchise, I'm going to say 28 Days because 28 Days is how it all started. It's very UK based. A lot of the stuff is, you don't understand it because it's a lot of kind of cultural things belonging to the UK in particular. That is Ireland, England, and I guess Scotland and stuff. And people didn't understand the whole get-up of Jimmy when they saw it at the end. The whole Power Ranger reference was because something to do with this whole stunts thing, but Spike has a Power Ranger action figure at the very beginning, and so then at the very end, it's like this whole Power Ranger, flip around and start moving the weapons around, like kind of like the performing for a circus or some kind of stunt, but they're also kicking the infected's ass and saving Spike's life. But you think they're going to be good guys because Soul Jimmy, played by Jack O'Connor, Wemmick himself, he ends up, he offers his hand and says, and tells him to join him. Spike does join him, but now I'm going to go into the second one. The Bone Temple, it starts off with Spike being initiated, and he has to go through like this fighting one of the Jimmies in order to replace that Jimmy and be in, Soul Jimmy's gang. And, Spike does it. I'm not going to go into spoilers, or I'm going to try not to. But Spike originally doesn't like this group. He's saved by him, but he doesn't like them. And eventually he wishes, I just want to be on my own again. I'd do anything but to be with this group. Because this group is actually worse than the infected. They literally torture people. They cut their skin off of their flesh while they're alive. They torture people, like I said. And and you can tell from the trailer for this movie that there's something devious about Jack O'Connor's character. but you don't know exactly what it is. And I was actually shocked to learn that it's a whole Antichrist, 666 Mark of the Beast kind of thing with this guy. Apparently, his father, as you know from the first one, was a pastor, and when he saw his father offer himself to his children, and I put that in quotation marks. Why am I stuck on So Jimmy here? But he offers himself to his children, and he just lets himself become infected. Well, and I'm looking at the score as well, by the way. I wanted to check out the IMDb score for this movie, since we're going to see what other people... So, it looks like critics are fine with it. Audiences are mostly fine with it. That's good. That's great. Let's go back into my review. Go full screen here. So... yeah, so, Spike has a problem with it, Spike, who is, if I look at the list, what now? And I'm going to go by this alone. Like I said, Ellen Taylor-Joy is not in this. So you got Spike that plays Spike played by Alfie Williams. He does not like this group. Jimmy Connor Noir plays Jimmy Shite. I thought it was kind of like Jimmy Jimmy White, but whatever. Then you got Owen Kelman plays Jimmy Inc. Kelman, she was in the Captain America, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think. Falcon and the Winter Soldier that was on Disney. That's on Disney Plus. As well as a few other things. Got Maura Bold as Jimmy Jones. Kazi Al-Wafir as Jimmy Snake. And Robert Rose as Jimmy. And then Emma Leod as Jimmy Mia. Oh, and of course Sam Locke as Jimmy Fox. Those are the Jimmys, and I was wondering why this guy looked like that in the movie. Of course, you got Chi Lewis Perry as Samson. He was also as a minor woe in the movie The Running Man. If you pay attention, I actually caught him that because I caught him in that. I saw that he was in that movie. He was one of the contestants of The Running Man that died by suicide. Then you got other notable. Of course, you get Ralph Fiennes as Dr. Kelson, the crazy doctor that's he bones the dead bodies to the point where he gets he doesn't cremate them. He just bones them to the point where he gets the bones and he cleans the bones, especially the skulls, and he separates the bones and he adds them to his bone temple. There's another pregnant infected, of course, played by Sally Crossland. It's like a really small scene. You've got Marilyn Mack as Kathy. She's a pregnant survivor in this movie. She actually she escapes, so she's gonna be, I think, in part 3 again. But you're kind of rooting for her, and you're thinking maybe she's gonna help. Maybe she's gonna team up with Spike, in a way. But a little spoiler here. She does it anyway. Gordon Alexander as Juno, one of the ones that become infected. Louis Ashbourne Sokis as Tom, one of the people that are tortured. He, Tom, George, and Matthew, they become tortured by this Jimmy group. They're skinned alive, and I think they're left for dead because something happens. And I don't want to mention anything else, but anyway, that's spoilery. What I want to talk about is this movie is not like all about the infected, like the first few are. And I say that because it's more about this Jimmy group that is torturing people, and they have this whole Mark of the Beast Antichrist vibe. What it is Soul Jimmy, once again played by Jack O'Connell, he believes he's the son of the devil. He believes he's the son of Saint Nick, not Santa Claus, but Satan. And I'd forgotten that one of Satan's nicknames is Saint Nick. And Yeah, I was right. Negative dude, a winning man. And so, they want to eventually meet Saint Nick, and it turns out that the Dr. Kelson, played by Ralph Diniz, I forget his name, Ralph something. Yeah, Ralph Fiennes. He you see it in the trailer. They think he's the devil. They think he's their master. They think he's aka Jimmy's father, So Jimmy's father, because So Jimmy himself is considered the son of Saint Nick or Satan, and so I guess he would be called the Antichrist, which is why he wears his cross, his crucifix cross necklace upside down. The cross part, I mean. So it's not just the whole thing about when he was younger, he was holding it upside down, or it was appearing to be upside down in the camera view as he was running away, but as a young boy. But he literally wears it upside down, and some of them, I think he marks his followers, the members of the cult, with a upside down crucifix to mark, kind of the Antichrist type vibes. Because one person in particular, one of them in particular, has it right on the center of her forehead in between her eyes. And spoiler alert, it's Jimmy Inkkill. But enough of spoilers, okay? So I was fascinated to find out that this movie is not quite about the infected, at least not in terms of survival. Because when you have like an apocalypse type movie that's reminiscent or similar to The Walking Dead, it's not always going to be about the infected. It's going to be about the survivors, and then you're going to, not only do you have the nice group, but you have that mean group that's going to be seen as bullying, harassing other ones, plundering and pillaging the food, coming unwanted, and without permission, kind of like Negan's group in The Walking Dead. When you first see Negan taking over or whatever, and even in this case torturing other survivors, because you would think normally in this they would want to survive, and it starts out as that, but then eventually some people get twisted in the head, and they start thinking, not only do you have to take and steal, but we have to torture people. The reason why I find it unique is because typically with these types of media, they don't have a reason why they torture people. There's no clear meaning why they do it. They just kind of do it because they're crazy. But this cult, the Jimmy cult, there's a reason why they're doing it. They believe that they are followers of Satan, and Satan wants them to torture people. And while that is kind of a non-specific reason, it is at least a little bit more specific than just saying they're crazy or not having a reason at all. Because when you first meet Negan's group or the mayor in the Walking Dead franchise, you don't know why they are bad. You don't know why. And you don't know why what the motives are. But in this one, you somewhat have an explanation of what the motives are, because Jimmy is seen as the son of the devil, and he believes that his father wants him to torture people in his name. So it's the opposite of Christ, who wants you to save people in his name. The devil would want you to kill people in his name. Not only kill them, but torture them. And Jimmy can't do it alone. He has to have followers. And at one point, you're thinking that maybe So Jimmy is kind of misleading them, that he knows he's not the son of the devil, but he's just using this to brainwash people and get them to follow him. And you're thinking to yourself, he's got everybody fooled. And, that's how he survives and gets what he needs. But he actually does believe it, because there's a point in this movie where he meets the doctor, and the doctor initially says, "Oh no, I'm not. You think I'm Saint Nick? Oh, you mean Satan? No." But then he kind of goes along with it, and I've watched it twice now, so I've forgotten why he goes along with it per se. But I think it's because they come. He doesn't know how else to get rid of them, because he sees that they're so devoted that he has to play along in order to get them to, leave, because they won't. And so, so That's one thing about this movie I like. The second thing I like about this movie is the whole this does actually involve the infected. It's the whole thing with the alpha. The alpha you think was just like he's smarter, more intelligent, and it's always a he, it's never a she. But that's where it ends. He's still infected. He's still just as mad as the rest of them of the infected. He's still going to kill and always be like that. But in this one, Samson in particular, he displays a certain level of intelligence that even Dr. Kelson sees as most interesting. Dr. Kelson has a particular dart, like blow dart. He has a pipe that he blows the dart out of. And within that dart is a morphine that is powerful enough to window Samson immobile. Now, Samson is so powerful that he could still stand while under the effects of the morphine, but he's not gonna move. He's mostly gonna be like all cross-eyed and dazing around, and the doctor uses this to learn from Samson, to see, to learn from his patient, his infected patient. And those moments, sorry, mild spoilers here, when he's dancing around with Samson, he's conversating with them. Of course, he doesn't do it without using that morphine dart, but you see him as weird, but you understand why he's doing it. He uses the alpha because the alpha is like not only the leader, but he is the one that would have the most intelligence, because the rest of them just all flail around and just attack you on sight and whatever. But the alpha in particular, and of course they command the other ones to attack, because we saw that in the first movie when Spike and his dad, once again played by Aaron Taylor-Joy. And I'm sorry, I wanted to find out his dad's the character that Aaron Taylor-Joy plays in this movie. Jamie. Now I remember. So Jamie, the father of Spike. Let me make sure I got the name right. Played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. Johnson, not Joy. Sorry, Aaron Taylor Johnson. I was thinking about Anya Taylor-Joy from Furiosa movie. But anyway, so in that one they were chased by the alpha, but you see that when the alpha spots them, he kind of yells at the rest, but he moves his hands in a way that signals the other infected to go after them, and then eventually, Spike and his dad end up in a house somewhere, the same house they were earlier when they found that hanging man, and Spike killed him, of course, and you saw that whole camera shift. That's courtesy of the new iPhones that they had at the time. They shot that film in iPhone 15. And I plan on seeing how they got the cinematography of this film, what camera technology they used. Because it's directed by the second one, The Bone Temple, is directed by Nia Costa. Mia Costa, I think. So the first one is directed by Danny Boyle. Of course, it's written by Alex Garland. But the second one is directed by Nia DaCosta. And if you don't know who she is, which you should know, Nia DaCosta, she directed Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the second Black Panther film. And The Marvels. Let me double check her. Because, did she direct the second Black Panther film? Or maybe it was just The Marvels. Oh, she did Candyman. That's right. She did Candyman. That came out 2021. So it wasn't Black Panther Forever. My bad. But she directed The Marvels and Candyman. And now she's in... she directed this movie. And people were kind of like on the fence about it. They didn't know if it was going to be good or bad. Oh, okay. So I didn't know he was in Glad here too. Okay. Anyway, they didn't know it was good or bad, if it's going to be good or bad, but turns out it's not that bad, because, like I said, this movie is a good movie. It's just that the story is not as much as the first one. it's not that it's not as deep. It just doesn't have a whole lot to it. But the story is kind of single. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of simple. And I don't know if that's in my terms good or bad, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And then, so I was getting into. I'm still talking about the plot. Oh, so the alphas. Yeah, the alphas are definitely more intelligent, but the doctor wants to know if Samson, as an alpha infected, if he can be rescued, saved or redeemed, meaning that if he can get his any part of his personality back, if he can get himself back, if he can find himself, if he can, under the effects of morphine, can he teach Samson to not be hostile? Can he, make him a friend? And the doctor actually somewhat does. So rather miraculously, because you're thinking to yourself, no, doctor, don't touch Samson. He's going to break your arm off and whip your head off like he does. And we see him do that again, too, in this movie. As a matter of fact, there's a moment in this movie when the head that he whips off, he cracks it open like you would a coconut, and he starts to eat the brains of the person's head. And of course, there's a bunch of gray matter, and of course, you wonder how they eat. Of course, they eat dead bodies, but not only are you thinking it's disgusting, but you kind of feel sorry for him because he's reduced to this because of the virus, because of the rage virus. And the way Samson looks, he's kind of, you're thinking, is he wanting more than this? Is he wondering if there's some part of him that used to not be like this, reduced to just having to eat these brains and act like this? Is there something inside of his subconscious to where he doesn't want to be infected anymore? And maybe he's wanting to break free of this curse, so to speak. And the doctor wants to save him and free him from that curse. Kind of like he's possessed by rage, honestly. And you just want him to calm down enough for the doctor to reach in and grab a hold of any humanity that might be within Samson. And so the doctor kind of does that more or less by conversating with him, dancing around with him. Of course, when he's affected by morphine, he doesn't do it without it. There is a moment when the doctor attempts to trust Samson without darting him, because every time the doctor raises the dart, Samson stops charging. He stops in place. But when he drops it back down, Samson will charge. He will run towards him like he's going to attack and kill him. That's at the beginning of this movie. And that's when the doctor says most interesting, letting us know that he finds it interesting that Samson will stop when he raises it, but when he lowers it, he'll charge. And it's like Samson is learning that he's going to use that dart if he charges. So Samson is displaying, memory and learning behavior. And he sees that as somewhat human because the infected could learn from, because it's not just observation, it's Samson remembers being hit with the dart. But and he doesn't really want that. He doesn't want that, at least not at first. But then as the doctor keeps using it, you're kind of left wondering, does Samson want to be under these effects? Because it kind of not only calms him down, but he can attempt to have any type of memory of his former life before he got infected. And then I'm trying to wrap this up. And then the doctor, he attempts to trust Samson, touching his shoulder and getting him to not attack him. He says it's a transaction. As long as you don't attack me, I won't use this dart. It's a quote-unquote quick pro quo. So sorry I'm spoiling it a little, but hopefully by now you've seen it. I know I said I wouldn't, but, anyway. But then Samson does stop. He doesn't attack him, and he's not even morphinated. But what happens is the doctor he hits him with the dart anyway, just to be safe. And you're kind of thinking, thank God he did that, because Samson is still unpredictable when he's not under the effects of morphine. So, because as a rationalizing human being, of course you would dart him, because these infected, they act like wild animals. So, but there's a moment when Samson has this kind of memory journey. He has a memory, or maybe he's imagining it, him being on a train, And apparently, when he was younger, he wanted to go to the moon because a little bit earlier in the film, he's looking at the sky, and Dr. Kelson is talking to him, and Samson says, "Moon." And when he says "moon," the doctor is talking about, like, I know these morphine helps you, and I'm trying to save you, but if I can't save you, maybe I can save you in another way. And he means to kill him with the same thing that he used to kind of gently kill Spike's mom in the first one. So Spike's mom, as you remember, had brain cancer, and she told Spike that it's okay, sweetie. I know that what I have is not curable. It's not reversible, because originally Spike took, he takes his mom and they both leave the compound, the safety of the compound, to go seek out this doctor that, his dad, Jamie, told him about, but he told his son to stay away from him. But Spike's like, Spike has that moment of rebelliousness against his dad. He points his little knife at his dad. His dad grabs it, but hands it back to him. Punches the wall, kind of thing. And but then Spike takes his mom to go find the doctor to see if he could cure her of her mental disease. But apparently he can't, because he tells Spike what she has is not curable. But I do have something that could peacefully put her out of her misery. And of course he uses that, and then he moons her body, takes her skull, cleans it, puts it up atop, and then Spike climbs the tower, and then of bones, the bone tower, the bone tower in the bone temple, and he lays his head against his mom's, like they're both looking at the sunset. Because you should remember it if you've seen the first part. But that stuff that he used to put his mom out of her misery, and let me see if I can pull up the name of the character, because the mother, Isla, played by Jodie Comer in the first one. So so he puts her out of her misery, and that same stuff is what Dr. Kelson offers Samson. If he cannot cure him otherwise, he could save him by putting him out of his misery with the that same stuff. I don't know what it's called, actually. I think it's not morphine. I can try to see if I could find it on Wikipedia. If I go into, like, I'm going to duplicate this tab, actually. Go into all and try to find, because Wikipedia will tell you the plot, right? It'll tell you the plot. And I don't want I don't want to spoil it, but try to find Samson here. Yes, grown addicted to the effects of his blowpipe, and is intentionally letting himself be drugged under the influence of which he becomes more lucid, because he likes the feeling of it. Because I think the infected, they have this thing that they don't want to be enraged. They don't always want to be expressed clearly, easy to understand. They don't want to be constantly angry or enraged. They want to calm down, because there's also this moment when Samson, right before he whips, the only head whipping that he does in this movie, in the Bone Temple, is he sees the man as one of the infected. And this is from the perspective of Samson, and that's why he whips off his head, before he eats his brains. But he whips his head off because he sees him as infected. So apparently the infected, the actual people, the uninfected, the infected see the uninfected as infected. And it's kind of like a paranoia state of being infected with the virus, because the virus affects your brain, and it makes you see delusions, and these delusions of the infected seeing the infected when the person that they're actually looking at is in fact not infected. Follow along with me here. They see them as infected during their delusions or their hallucinations, caused by the rage virus. And this causes them to go into their rage frenzy. You kind of have a friendship, I guess, and I don't want to trust Wikipedia, but so yeah, so there's this whole aspect when the Dr. Kelson is about to use this method to put Samson out of his misery. But whenever Samson says moon, he realizes that Samson can speak, and not only that, because speaking has a very particular purpose. It shows intelligence, so it shows that under the effects, Samson is calm enough. Under the effects of morphine, Samson is calm enough to speak, and make himself understandable. And so maybe the doctor is actually reaching Samson. So, and there's a point when the doctor trusts Samson enough to fall asleep on the grass right beside Samson. And Samson does not tear his head off, because the doctor reaches for his face and he's like still intact, and it's kind of a funny moment. So Samson apparently had gotten up and left the doctor alone. And of course you see Samson return, but he stays at a distance from the doctor. And I don't want to watch it enough. Watch it again enough for that, because it's kind of it's a little bit funny. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so that's that aspect of the infected, that the alpha can be treated, because later on he actually thanks the doctor. He says, "Kelson, thank you," before the doctor, spoiler alert, dies and he carries his body away for some reason. He thanks the doctor because he's got somewhat of his humanity back. Not entirely, but he's got enough of it back to like be kind of he can speak, and his eyes are not as red, they're brown this time, so you can tell that the virus is leaving. But it makes you think, how is it that morphine has such an effect? Does it calm them down enough with enough dosages, enough hits with the morphine? It can't be just one time. It has to be multiple times. When they build up a tolerance, they build up a likeness to it, but it calms them down enough to where they're not enraged all the time. So maybe they can get back some of their humanity. Maybe it affects the virus itself, because morphine, I don't know if he says it's morphine, but it's basically used to kill game like elephants and lions and bears and stuff like that. It could put them down, or maybe put them to sleep in a way, if they act up. That's the kind of stuff he uses, because Samson, as strong as he is at least as strong as an animal, if not stronger, and so he has to be put down with a strong enough sedative. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention that I like this one because it goes more in depth into the rage virus and how it can be perhaps treatable, even reverse the effects in a way. But it's also about this cult group that is called the Jimmies, and led by Jimmy, what is his last name? Right. Once again, played by Jack O'Connor. So Jimmy Crystal. Yeah. So that's why I think it's a good movie. It's definitely I say go check it out. You don't have to watch it in Dolby. You can watch it in regular 2D. But if you got A-list, go ahead and check it out in Dolby. Go see this movie, especially if you've seen the first one. And thank you so much, guys. That's it for my review. I know I've gone like nearly 40 minutes, and I don't like it when people go too long, but I have to go too long because I just don't know how. I don't really know how to give reviews. I don't know how to do them without kind of spoiling it, more or less. But I really enjoyed this movie. Thank you so much for watching once again. Like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll be able to make more reviews out, this year, without spending too much money. So, take care. Okay, so I've given my review for the movie, and as you can see, it's it's being saved to my computer's my micro SD card, so I'm gonna upload it to YouTube later. But I want to go into more now how it's being seen by other people, and so without too much further ado, let's start off with the wheel shift. And before I do that, let me make sure I get myself ready. Settings.
So prior to this film's release, it was described as an exploration of evil by the people involved with making it. Well, now that I've seen it for myself, I can confidently say it is exactly that, and so much more.
Let's discuss.
I watch
So you don't have to.
you don't have to.
I love that image. I like this image actually. Fear is the new faith. Let me show you. I like to download these images, and I meant to put them. I got the image somewhere. I downloaded a bunch of images. That kind of is half of it. Wish I had that poster. And I've got the poster, the so-called limited edition poster that they have in the fan event that I saw Thursday. So I saw this movie Thursday, and then once again today, Saturday, I believe it's Saturday. No, Friday. Oh, here's the image. Here's the image here. Put up on full screen for you. Fear is the new faith, and it's got the main actors, especially these three you see. It doesn't mention him. Once again, Samson is played by Chi Lewis Perry.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Let me refresh it so I can have that pop-up effect that I like so much.
So prior to this film's release, it was described as an exploration.
What are you waiting for?
The Bone Temple continues the story from 28 years later, focusing
YouTube's
on
got
the
issues.
humanity of survivors and the philosophical aspects of long-term survival, with Dr. Kelson and Spike facing new threats. So coming out of 28 years later, let's just say there was an extremely divisive reaction to that movie. Many people criticized it for deviating too far from the 28 Days franchise that they know and love. Coincidentally, that just so happened to be the very reason why I personally enjoyed it so much. And that's not to say I don't have admiration for 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later. I'm simply saying that given the circumstances, it does feel like each one of these films kind of has their own feel to it, and I like that. Now, having seen two films in Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's new vision of 28 years, I can honestly say that it's clear to me they came into this with the intention of making this franchise more than just your run-of-the-mill zombie-infected story that a lot of people wanted it to be. It's very clear to me that they had bigger plans for this story and this world. And what
Yeah, so that's what I was saying in my review, is it's not just about the infected, because we've seen that in the first movie, the second movie, 28 weeks later, first movie being titled 28 days later. We've seen that. We've seen the infected, become infected, like if you so much just get spat on by, they cough out blood, so if you get like a little bit of blood in your eye from the infected, they instantly become infected within just a matter of seconds, and they become one of them, and they just go into rage frenzy. Because I love the opening of 28 Weeks Later. You got the family that's, chilling out in the house, being being survivors in their house, but all of a sudden this boy comes along. They feed the boy, but he's followed by the infected, and they make their way into the house. One of the women, she's bitten on the arm by one of the infected that has grabbed her arm, and immediately when she spins around and lands on her boyfriend or whoever it is, she's infected. You see her eyes turn red, and she's coughing up blood, and she's throwing up blood. When she's throwing up blood out of her mouth, he gets infected. So, and I say that because in this movie, one individual in particular, let's see if I can find him. This guy, Jono, played by Gordon Alexander, he is infected because as he's killing some of the infected, slashing away at them, some of their blood gets in his eyes and or mouth, and eventually he becomes infected. So it's I don't know if it's here in the plot, but yeah, they're called so apparently I call them the Jimmy Cult group. They're called the Fingers because they're referred to as the fingers of Satan. 7 of them. No, 5 fingers. There should be 10 for 5 fingers, but I digress. They skin alive the remaining survivors as a sacrifice to Satan, whose voice Soul Jimmy claims to hear as his son, causing Spike to leave the barn vomiting in disgust because Spike doesn't like them cutting off the skin. He actually literally throws up. And I just want to find... anyway, at the Bone Temple, Kelson, fearing the most, administers Samson a cocktail of antipsychotics. Yeah. Oh, so he was initially infected at the train. That's why Samson keeps appearing to it. At the moment, I don't have a ticket to a hallucinated train guard. Because he's hallucinating it, and the medicine that he's under, antipsychotics, is making him hallucinate. Yeah, so it's like the infected can sense that he's not infected anymore, but he wasn't given any anti-infection thing. He was just kind of given these antipsychotics. So I'm thinking that mostly the rage virus is like mentally or psychologically affected. So as long as you can calm down, you're just kind of closer to, getting cured.
They've done, especially with the Bone Temple, is deliver something that is truly unique inside of an established franchise, which is almost unheard of.
Impressive. Most impressive.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There is absolutely nothing like going to the theater and sitting down to watch a movie and having no idea what you are getting yourself into. And 28 years later, the Bone Temple gave me those type of experiences. A lot has been said about the very...
Yeah, they're not like the first two, because, the first one I have not really seen from beginning to end. I saw parts of it. But the second one, I actually had the DVD. It was the only 28 whatever of this franchise that I've owned personally on DVD. And I love that one because it's just the opening, the way it displays the infected as, you immediately toned. And, and I like this one because it shows, because to me, the infected is more psychology than it is. It's more psychology and neurology more than it is physically. Because they're not considered zombies. They're not dead. They still eat. They're just altered into a point where they're like cannibals. You know, they raging cannibals.
Very final scene of 28 years later for its massive tonal shift and how it ruined the movie for some people. And you know what, to be fair, even I wasn't initially sure how I felt about it when I watched it for the first time. But now, seeing what it leads to, this absolutely batshit insane movie called The Bone Temple, I think that final scene in 28 years later has taken on a whole new meaning. The characters that were introduced at the end of 28 years later, we'll just call them the Jimmies, were absolutely jarring for a multitude of reasons.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
But when you see just how jarring they are to the people in this world who are just trying to survive and get by, suddenly their reason for existing in this story becomes so much more clear. They are quite literally evil personified. And their somewhat unthreatening appearance, if you don't know what their appearance is based on, is brilliantly juxtaposed by their brutal and unhinged actions. Agents of Chaos are probably the best way to describe them. They are quite literally the Jokers of this apocalyptic wasteland. They are led by the lead Jimmy, aka Jimmy Crystal, who is played by Jack O'Connell. And this man puts on a menacing performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in some time. I mean, he makes his own character in Sinners look like absolute child's play.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Everything from his demeanor, to his motivations, to his frighteningly effective methods of manipulation, it all works here. We've seen scenarios like this in the past, where in zombie or infected stories, it is revealed that some of the human characters are actually more of a threat than the infected themselves. It's always about what a world like this does to humanity, and how different people react to this situation in different ways. Well, the inclusions of the Jimmies in this story is very much that idea, but turned up to 11. I mean, these dudes are sick and twisted to the point that I was genuinely uncomfortable watching them in any scene that they were a part of. The barn scene was particularly unsettling, and I won't spoil what happens here, but let's just say I think the scene's going to stick with you.
Boy.
I think the scene's going to stick. Won't spoil what happens here, but let's particularly unsettling, and I won't spoil what watching them in any scene that they were a part of. The barn scene was particularly unsettling, and I won't spoil what happens here, but let's just say I think the scene's going to stick with you.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
In addition to exploring evil with the Jimmies, we also have Dr. Kelson returning, and his fascination with the infected, more specifically, the dick-swinging Alpha Samson. Now, if the whole pregnant infected sequence bothered you some in 28 years later, even though there was a perfectly good explanation for why it was happening if you dug a little deeper, then the whole Dr. Kelson Samson portion of this movie might actually give you an aneurysm. But for me personally,
Hold on.
the dick-swinging Alpha Samson. Now, if the whole pregnant infected sequence bothered you some in 28 years later, even though there was a perfectly good explanation for why it was happening if you dug a little deeper, then the whole Dr. Kelson Samson portion of this movie might actually give you an aneurysm. But for me personally, I very much enjoyed their interactions because the movie uses these two characters to dive deeper into the infection that this entire franchise was built on. This movie...
Yeah, because there's a lot about the infection that you don't know about. You know, you're wondering, well, if you're bleeding and you're infected and you spit in my face, I become infected within seconds. Look, this dude, this swinging dude, is trying to fuck a heads off people. He would clink him by his neck and rip his head off in front of you. From that to fucking him calm as fuck, dazed as hell, wanting more of the shit. He comes to the... This dude, he becomes this... Not really a deal, but you know.
very much explores how the virus takes over its host And if there is anything left of that person inside, that is worth saving. That is going to be a controversial concept to some, I'm sure, but for me personally, I found it fascinating.
I like it a lot.
For me, at least, you just can't help but get wrapped up in Kelson's quest for more knowledge on the subject. And Ralph Fiennes' beautifully unhinged performance is a big reason why it all works as well. This film very much shows Kelson in a light that we haven't seen him in yet, a more humanizing light. Dr. Kelson is very much one of those characters that I didn't expect to connect to in the way that I did, but by the time we get to the Bone Temple, he is on the verge of, or already become, an iconic character in this franchise. And that's one thing that this movie, as well as the previous movie, does really well to a degree, and that's be able to establish these characters in an effective way in a short amount of time. Think about this. We've only known Kelson for about a movie and a half, and we've known Jimmy for about a half a movie by the time that they meet up. And somehow, because of the way that these characters were presented to us, when that confrontation happens, it feels like a big deal. It has a lot to do with the fact that you want to see how some of their dueling ideologies about life and death play out in that interaction. If I had one or two nitpicks about this movie, one of them is probably that Spike was put on the back burner just a little bit in this film. He just feels more like a pawn this time around than a main character because Jimmy and Kelson command so much of the audience's attention. There were also moments throughout this film where I completely forgot about the non-alpha infected, which are used in the film, but they are used very sparingly, and they did kind of feel like an afterthought after a while. These two things will probably be rectified if the third movie does in fact come to fruition, but
It's kind of like The Walking Dead. Eventually, with the whole AMC's Walking Dead, you see it starts off with The Walking Dead, but as seasons go by, it becomes less and less about The Walking Dead and more about survival, minus certain characters. And clearly with this film, they're trying to make Samson a character, he's not just a boss fight, if you want to compare it to a video game. He's kind of a character that maybe can be seen as kind of you might save Spike one day, I guess, if he's ever in a jam.
Pretty much okay with these omissions this time around because the Bone Temple felt like it was very much designed to be this highly philosophical side quest in establishing this world further.
That makes sense.
I mean, think about this for a moment. When was the last time we saw an infected person in one of these movies get some kind of character development? That happens in the Bone Temple, and it's done pretty well on top of that. Now, going into this movie, I was very much looking forward to it, but there was a part of me that was a little bit skeptical because of the director, Nia DaCosta. Someone who I've been highly critical of in the past for her movies like The Marvels and the Candyman reboot, which I did not care for. But after watching The Bone Temple, I am absolutely 100% obligated to give her her flowers because to me, she completely knocked this movie out of the park. Not to make this about Marvel, but I think it says something about how being involved in a formulaic franchise like that offers limited creative freedom really does hold creators back. And we can very much add Nia DaCosta to that list. With the Bone Temple, she showed me that she has the talent to rise above the slop she had previously been associated with. So good on her.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Bottom line, if you did not like the new direction that was taken with 28 Years Later, then you're probably not going to like the Bone Temple either. For me personally, I appreciated the fact that they were willing to take this franchise into new and exciting directions, rather than just playing it safe after so much time away. I went down a rabbit hole after watching 28 Years Later of a lot of film analysis and theory videos that made me appreciate that movie more than I already did. And I fully expect to do the exact same thing with the Bone Temple, because say what you will about these two movies, I think there's a lot going on under the surface, and there's definitely more than meets the eye, even if you do not see it on your first view.
What is real? How do you define real?
For me, both movies actually stuck with me long after I finished watching them, and that is usually a good sign that I'm watching something special. The Bone Temple is rich on themes and philosophical ideas about life, death, survival, what it means to be human, good and evil, and everything in between. It is a relentlessly brutal experience that also doesn't skip on some highly effective character work that actually makes you give a shit about what you're watching. I'm absolutely fascinated about how Danny Boyle, Alex Garland, and now Nia DaCosta have reshaped this world into something that I honestly was not expecting going in. 28 years later pretty much had me locked in from start to finish, and that's exactly why I'm going to be giving it the Pleased Palpatine. Good. If you needed a good...
Y'all be cool. Right on.
Yeah. Alright, let's see what Tyrone Magnus thinks. Come on, goofy ass. You ain't gotta do all that shit, man. Damn. Get to it now.
I'm telling y'all right now.
I am telling you right now.
Now.
I am telling you right now.
This movie almost got a big old piece of trash. In the middle of the movie, there's certain aspects that changed my mind. As a matter of fact, I saw a thumbnail for another movie reviewer earlier today while scrolling on YouTube. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. Because I know how the last movie made me feel. So when I went to see this movie, I'm in the middle of it, and the movie's going. And the movie's going, and the movie's going, and the movie's going. And I'm like, what?
He gets enough money. It's gotta be
So I take out my phone in the middle of the theater while I'm watching this to go to Rotten Tomatoes. Now keep in mind, I do not trust Rotten Tomatoes anymore.
Yes, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't mention it. Stop. They keep saying that they don't trust Rotten Tomatoes, yet they keep using Rotten Tomatoes. So at some point, you do trust it to some
After
extent.
all the Captain Marvel debacles and the Acolyte and a bunch of other stuff, as we all know, they can't.
See, every reviewer, every one of these that even remotely grift films, people like The Critical Drinker and Nodwatic, and even Film Threat, they keep mentioning things like Marvel and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, all the bad stuff that people that they hate watch it. They watch it for the purpose of hating on it later, which, you know, is if you keep listening to them, you're like, is there anything that you like? You ask yourself, is there anything that you do like? Why don't you watch that instead of watching something you don't like? Because they can't talk about it. It's not as trendy to watch something that you do like and talk about it versus watch something you don't like and talk about it. So that's why they do it. And they keep repeating the same lines, you know, and they don't go into depth and give me examples, kind of like you're making a video essay of how it's woke, how it's terrible, how it's garbage, whatever you say. You don't want to, you just want to give it these barrage of names without even going into detail of anything that you just claimed. And now he's kind of being like, well, I hate Rotten Tomatoes, but he's not going to tell you why. He just says, I don't trust it.
Can't be trusted. And a bunch of other stuff. After all the Captain Marvel debacles and the Acolyte and a bunch of other stuff, as we all know, they can't be trusted. However, in certain situations, I think they're more trustworthy than others. And here, I have no idea. It seems as if the audience and the critics both love this movie. How? I don't know. Now, I told you it was going to get a big old piece of trash. Let me explain myself and without spoiling anything, and you can see how I came to my decision. And it's really simple. So, the last movie was a major disappointment to most 28 Days or 28 Years Later fans, whatever you want to call it. And this movie should have been called 28 Years Later, Dicks Flapping. That's what it should have been called, okay? Overuse of male genitalia in your face. More than one this time. Last time it was one. This time it was two. And I was like, really? I don't need this. I've never needed... There's certain things I just don't need in movies. I never needed nudity. I don't need excessive gore and blood and violence. I don't need it. I know why. They put certain movies, it seems as if it's just gratuitous. They're just trying to, you know. But anyway, it's just something I don't need. It's just one of the many things that I don't exactly need. So, watching this and, you know, there's some interesting kills. They're expecting to see some interesting stuff from the zombies or the infected, rather. And the cult in this movie agitated me. They irritated me, rather. And, you know, there's some interesting kills. They're expecting to see some interesting stuff from the zombies or the infected, rather. And the cult in this movie agitated me. They irritated me. They got on my nerves. I didn't... You can say, oh, well, I mean, they did a good job of making them villains. No. You know, I think the best villains are the villains that you like at the same time. You're like, yo, this dude is a piece of... Or this group of people are just, but yo, I like how they present them. I like how they win them. They just irritated me. I didn't like not one of them. Okay? I couldn't stand them. I was waiting for every single one of them to get theirs. And sometimes that's the point too. I get it. They want you to. But in my opinion, I like to like the villain a little bit. You know, just a smidge. You know what I'm saying? I get it. They want you. And sometimes that's the point too. I get it. They want you to. But in my opinion, I like to like not one of them. Okay? I couldn't stand them. I was waiting for every single one of them to get theirs. And sometimes that's the point too. I get it. They want you to. Yeah. But in my opinion, I like to like the villain a little bit. You know, just a smidge. You know what I'm saying? I don't like nothing redeemable about them. So I guess you could say, in a way, they were great villains. But the movie bored me at times. It bored me at times until there was a particular point in the movie where they introduced new lore. That is the reason why I'm not giving it a failing score. That rhymed like to play 8 game bars. I think it rhymed. By the way, they are kind of, I think there's some box checks in this movie because the men are getting their behinds kicked by the women in this. And it's just like, okay. All right, okay.
What sense is the women attacking the men? So there's a particular scene when the woman Kathy, the woman that escapes, she's that redhead. She's apparently pregnant. It's not really men that are getting their butts kicked. She kills the first one that she kills is actually a woman. Spoiler alert. I've given my review, so I can spoil it if I want to. She kills a woman first with a hook, kind of like I think they use it for like picking up tractors or automotive or something like that. That's the first person she kills. I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the moment where that woman that is killed is beating up the individual that he skinned. He wasn't skinned alive, but he saw the other people skinned alive. Tom, played by Louis Ashbone Sokes, he picks, because Jimmy tells him to pick any one of the fingers of his little group for him to have a fair chance at fighting against. If he kills that person, then they'll let him go. They'll let Tom go. And Tom picks Jimmy played by Emma Laud, I guess that's her name. Laud. And she says to him, "You picked me. I know why you picked me, because you thought I was the weakest." And that did appear to be kind of touching on woke, like film boss kind of stuff, but he was already kind of injured and tired, and maybe and all the Jimmys were kind of acrobatic, and they've already been practicing their Power Ranger martial arts with the infected, because we saw them in the last one, the very ending of the Bone Temple. You see them doing flips and spins with their rods, their poles and shit, nunchucks or whatever. So they're acting like ninjas or Power Rangers or whatever. They're already skilled, so of course he does get a good hit on her. He backhands at one point, which is kind of funny, but it's not entirely woke. But if he's referring that's really just one scene. It's not a bunch of men getting their asses handed to them, like he said. He's saying that to exaggerate it, to make sure that the YouTube algorithm pays attention to him. And so he's giving anti-woke content. And I've said numerous times, I'm not pro-woke, but I'm not pro-anti-woke. I'm against both groups as a neutral party, because I'm tired of all this wokeness. It's 2026. Let's get out of this woke thinking and this anti-woke thinking. That's just, like Morgan Freeman said, a good way to stop racism, and I'm using wokeness and anti-wokeness in this context, is to just stop talking about it.
They do something different with the Lord. They do a couple of things different with the Lord, to tell you the truth. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it.
But yeah, she does. She's the first woman that she kills. I'm talking about Kathy, is that woman that's kicking, I think her boyfriend's ass, because he's the father of her child, I guess. So she kills her. Then she doesn't really kick anybody else's ass. She just runs away. And even that dude, Tom, he does something. He gets one of these gas cannons. He gets a gas canister, and he uses it as a flamethrower, and blows the fire. But of course, he's killed with an arrow before he has a chance to really deliver a finishing blow. But him going limp and letting that canister go, it means it explodes, and it fouls Sir Jimmy Crystal's plans, because 3 of his members die in that one fight. That one little battle, 3 of them die. So how many does he have? I think there's 7 members. Let me check IMDb again, because so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members, and so one of them previously died at the beginning of it. I think is this guy. So that's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 3 of them die. So there's, Spike had replaced the one that he killed earlier, so it's still 7. So it's 4 of them left, including Spike. But if you don't want to include Spike in that group, then it's technically 3. So it's just Jimmy Inc., I think Jimmy Snake, and maybe Jimmy Jones that's left. No, I think he dies too. So I think it's one of, or maybe it's this guy. I don't know. I forgot which one. I have to watch it again just for. But yeah, about 3 of them die because she's hit in the head with the hook, and then she's burnt alive, along with one of these other ones. I can't remember which one. She is later killed by Jimmy Inc., along with one of the men, and I just, like I said, I forget, but it's in no way woke.
It or not, because I wanted this one particular character gone. I was tired of him. But I was like, They do something different with the lore. They do a couple of things different with the lore, to tell you the truth. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not, because I wanted this one particular character gone. I was tired of him. But I was like, okay, interesting. Has to do with the doctor. You know, I'm like, okay. Something different with the lore. They do a couple of things. I think there's some box checks in this movie, because the men are getting their behinds kicked by
416. No, I think it's
They do something different with the lore. They do a couple of things different with the lore, to tell you the truth. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not, because I wanted this one particular character gone. I was tired of him. But I was like, okay, interesting. Has to do with the doctor. You know, and I'm like, okay. And then near the end, I was like, I didn't expect it to go that far. But it did, and I was like, oh, really? So what are we going to do about this? What? Something happens with the doctor. I'm kind of like, what we... And then at the end, the very end, there is no post-credit scene, by the way, but at the very end, you get a cameo. You get a surprise cameo. It was a surprise to me. Maybe some of y'all know, but it's a surprise cameo. And I was like, oh, really? And they fade to black on it. Basically telling you there's going to be another one. Okay? So, in between the cameo and the new lore, that was the only thing that kind of made me sit up in my chair, because I was like this the whole time, looking at my phone. What time is it? Okay. And then I looked up the runtime. Like, that's how you know you're ready. I looked up the reviews first. I looked up the runtime. I looked up, let me see, the reviews,
fucking face,
the runtime, and if there was a post-credit.
Bitch.
Because I was ready to go at one point. But the new lore perked my interest up. And like I said, in the end, they give us a nice cameo. And I was like, okay. I was like, it's okay. So at the end of the day, for me, it's 2.5 out of 5. Woos! Which makes it, meh. It was alright. It was okay. I never need to watch it again in my whole life. With me looking at Rotten Tomatoes, either that's a bold-faced lie, or a lot of people really, really do like it. It is what it is. If you like it, more power to... It looks like people are loving it. I think both scores are in the 90s. I think.
Close.
So, you know, if you're a huge fan, and with that many scores like that, go check it out. Maybe it's totally for you. But I left out in there like, man. However, because maybe it's if you're a huge fan. So, you know, if you're a huge fan, I think. So, both scores are in the 90s. I think.
809.
So, you know,
Nope, I don't.
if you're a huge fan, and with that many scores like that, go check it out. Maybe it's totally for you. But I left out in there like, man. However, because of who's introduced at the end, they make another one. I'll go see it because I want to see what they're going to do. but I don't. It just got away. Okay, it's a half a point away from a big old piece of trash for me. Okay, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think, mate. All right. Yeah. By the way, yeah, I know, and I noticed this in the movie before this one. At the end, scores are in the 90s, I think, because I want to see what they're going to do. But I don't. It just got away. Okay, it's a half a point away from a big old piece of trash for me. Okay. Post. Yeah. By the way, yeah, I know, and I noticed this in the movie before this one. At the end, I was like, I think this guy is based on that weird sicko criminal from the UK. And yeah. So
you know that
yeah,
he
you
is.
guys
You know
who he
that
is. He's like super famous in your news. Not so much in America, but I saw a documentary on him a few years ago, and I was like, good Lord. You know what I mean? All right, y'all. 10 million subscribers. Woo!
So now we officially have the second part of a new 28 trilogy. 28 years later, The Bone Temple, and we're going to review it. Oh boy, here we go. "28 years later, The Bone Temple" stars Ray Fiennes, Jack O'Connell, Alfie Williams, and is directed by Nia DaCosta.
Are you ready?
What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new 2026 review. We're going to review The Bone Temple,
he had a light
the
on.
follow-up to 28 Years Later, which came out last June. And it's January, and I can say...
Oh my God! I don't
think
care
I
about
can
your
safely
channel
say now,
numbers.
this is probably the best January quality-wise, at least for horror, that I can ever remember, okay? Because I've already reviewed 3 quality January movies, and then here we have The Bone Temple. And again, I'm not going to bury the lead. I think it'll be tough for this movie to move out of my top 5 by the end of this year. It is that freaking good, okay? I'm not one of those channels that makes you wait 10 minutes before I tell you if I like the movie or not. This movie is fucking awesome. If you want to hear why it's awesome, let's go ahead and give you a quick plot synopsis. And let me just say this too. I was not the biggest fan of 28 Years Later when I first watched it, but when it came to Netflix, I did give it a couple of more watches actually, and it definitely grew on me. But even still, this is far better, far better. But I think this is like elite status movie-wise. It is so freaking...
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but I was going to pause it. What I don't understand is about 28 Years Later that came out last year, people knew what they were getting themselves into. How come they don't like it? They knew that it was going to be post-apocalyptic. You knew that it was going to be... It's not going to be constantly about the infected, because we've done that already with 2 films. And now it's going to be about the aftermath of that, about a group of survivors, and you see how they survive. Just to say that you didn't like how post-apocalyptic, how it's a shift away from the infected. Like, that's what pretty much every post-apocalyptic infected movie is going to be about, whether it's zombies or vampirism or something like that. It's about surviving post-outbreak, post-infection with the ones that didn't get infected yet. It's the windows. So yeah, making sure the window is closed. I just don't get it. I don't understand the critique for not liking the movie.
Good, and I was just on cloud 9 leaving the theater because there's just so much in this movie that just really packs a punch. A heavy emotional punch, a visceral punch, a violent punch. It's let's get into this. Jesus, this movie. So this picks up right where the last one left off. The Jimmies were not a big part of the first movie at all. This movie, they occupy pretty much the entire thing. This is their story. This is a very different movie that's still in the same storyline as the last movie. And I think when you watch these two movies back to back, it does feel like just one continuous story that takes a shift right where this movie starts and goes into just a very different direction than the first movie did. But 28 years later, even like the middle of that movie, like, or I guess you could say the second half of that movie is quite different than the first half of the movie, because the first half of the movie was Spike was with his father. Second half of the movie, he is with his mother and he meets Dr. Kelson. So yeah, two very different, I guess, story beats going on there. So this one, again, just goes into some very different territory story-wise, with a lot of the same elements. It's just really good storytelling, I think, overall. And it sets the table nicely for the inevitable third movie, which I hope we get sooner than later. Spike, he is brought into the fold because he's in survival mode, right? And so the Jimmies, they don't really take no for an answer. And so Spike is put into some very uncomfortable situations where he is forced to do things that he, would make him a really bad person. Let's just say that. This is a spoiler-free review, okay? I'm going to be very careful. Yeah, this is, I think, a more violent movie than the last one. And there are some scenes in this movie that are not for the squeamish, for sure. And then you got Dr. Kelson, Ralph Fiennes, and he spends a good portion of the movie, I guess, refining his serum for the infected. And there's that big, I call him the Randy Macho Man Savage infected, just this big hulking guy. He calls him Samson in the movie. And he starts making some strides in terms of coming up with a cure. How far he goes, I'm not going to tell you. But it is a pivotal part of the movie, and so you're just wondering what's going to happen when the Jimmies end up colliding with Dr. Kelson. That's pretty much this whole story, what it all revolves around. Now let's get right into why I think this movie is so freaking good. I think if you're just a big fan of this whole world, the 28 days later, weeks later world, this takes the story even further. And even 28 years later took the story quite a bit further. But this, I think, as far as the rage virus goes, and yes, they are in here, but they don't occupy as much of this movie as any of the other movies. They're probably in this movie the least. But that doesn't take away from anything, because they're sort of like the backdrop of what's going on. And this is more about just how dangerous the Jimmies are. And I actually love that about that, because they were kind of a question mark in the last movie, where in this movie, they do some carnage and they are downright deadly. And I gotta say, Jack O'Connell, this guy has formulated, I think, one of the best villains of the year, and this will be a tough villain to beat. He is that effective, and I really gained a new appreciation for how strong of an actor he is and how intimidating he is. And you forget that he was the main vampire villain in Sinners, and he's fantastic in that. But he really is, he's just really a mesmerizing villain, and he's smart. He is like the leader of all these other Jimmies, and he's one of those like top dog villains that can get everyone else to do his bidding. There's almost like a Charles Manson aspect to him. And there is like a torture scene in the movie, which I won't go into detail about, but it's just one of those scenes where you're just like wondering, wow, how far are they going to go with this? And I'm surprised by how far they are going. This is a bona fide horror movie for sure. But it's one of those situations where they might not actually show you as much as you think they're showing you, because it's really kind of a mental thing. Like when you're watching it, you can kind of just fill in the gaps in your head, like how far they're going, and you just want it to stop, but you don't want it to stop if you're a big horror fan like me. I know that sounds sadistic, but I'm sorry. And I love Spike's journey here, how his story just keeps evolving, and he's just in this situation that you feel so bad for him. Like you want Spike to be able to get away from these monsters, as quick as possible. And there is this female member of the Jimmies. She goes by Jimmy Inc. And she is sort of a question mark of the movie. And I loved this young actress and how she portrayed her. Just another character that you really just can't take your eyes off of. Like, I found her so interesting. This movie really has a lot of great, interesting characters in it, and I think that's one reason why it works so well. Haven't even gotten to Ray Fiennes yet, but you know, he takes up probably half of this movie, and I'll just say there is a moment involving him that is really going to just floor you, and it's going to be completely unexpected. But when it happens, it is freaking awesome. There's definitely some Duran Duran love here as well, some Iron Maiden. There's some great music in the backdrop here, even like the Radiohead song. But it all really suits what's going on in the movie. You feel like the music is like strategically chosen for every scene that that it's in. But guys, it's not that often that the second movie of a trilogy is this freaking strong. Second movie of a trilogy is this freaking strong. And don't get me wrong, I would say there are a lot of sequels that are better than the first movie, or at least there's a debate to be had. I think this is a case where most people are going to prefer this movie over the last one, even though the last one is still very effective. But I do think the last one had different themes about it. Like, I think it dealt with grief and loss more, whereas this one, I think this is more about control and pain, just different themes, you know? But guys, I was floored by how strong this movie is. There are some really nice surprises if you're a fan of this whole lore, which I will not spoil. But it's just one of those endings that I was just fist pumping, like, wow, what a freaking movie. And not just fist pumping because, wow, that's a great ending. No, the entire movie, not a dull moment. The plot just constantly progresses to new and interesting ideas. It's just a very well-written script, if I'm getting right down to it. And again, Jack freaking O'Connell just slays this role. I like a villain that really kind of freaks me out, and boy does he. So yeah, Trapped on a Freaking Island, guys. This movie is so good. I got a feeling this is going to be like a big crowd pleaser, at least for horror fans, okay? But it's still got a really good story, and it leaves you begging for the third installment, all right? So yeah, that's my review for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Let me know what you guys think of this movie. I know a lot of you guys have already seen it. Let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to Drum Dums Extra. We just had a brand new Hit the Bricks after over 2 months last night with Davey and Nick. I'm going to be cutting some clips out for that. Going to be putting those on the second channel. It was a really great and fun stream. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do FIFA Fridays. Follow my Drum Dums on my social, support me on Patreon, become a channel member, buy me coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and Drum Dum out. Oh, and by the way, the Iron Maiden scene is so fucking awesome. Like, wow. One of the best scenes in the movie.
Shift in.
Depending on the scale of your zombie apocalypse, communication's gotta be key. Only a matter of time before you run across someone you can't communicate with them, and that language barrier stonewalls you cold. So, bringing you the sponsor of this video is brought to you by Babbel. Babbel's the award-winning app that makes learning a new language rewarding and simple. Babbel's courses are created by over 200 language experts, folks who know what they're doing. And you can practice conversations with an AI partner, which, okay, that right there is a solid application for AI. Because I've been in that awkward situation where you're in a foreign country and you're like, really wish that language barrier wasn't a thing. True story, I was in Mexico, walked into this shop, and I was all like, hola, because, you know, you want to relate. And I saw it. It was the twinkle in his eye, coupled with his next sentence, which was lengthy. He was like, a tourist who speaks Spanish. No way. He hit me with his next sentence in Spanish, to which I had to be like, no hablo español. For me, never again. For you, don't be like me. Click the link in the description or go to babbel.com/JeremyJohns and you'll get up to 55% off your subscription. Start speaking a new language in 3 weeks. And now the 28 Years Later DLC pack is dropped, so let's talk about it. I love for that intro, non-gamers are like, what? So 28 years later, The Bone Temple is a spin-off, so I'm told, of 28 years later. I say so I'm told because it feels more like a sequel to 28 years later. They don't have another variant play on words for 28 whatever it could be. So okay, spin-off, sure. Now admittedly, I didn't know what to expect from this movie. I think I saw one trailer for it. We know how it is. You watch a trailer these days, you've seen the entire film condensed into about 3.5 minutes. I don't want that. So do we get more of the Ralph Fiennes character in the Bone Temple in here? Yes. But also we follow the star of 28 years later, Spike. Where we left him off in 28 years later, he ran across a crew who looks like Spinal Tap if they were born in the Village of the Damned, and they said, hey kid, come roll with us. That's really where this movie starts out with us. In that, I feel like once again, for the second 28 years movie in a row, I'm reviewing 2 movies in one, though admittedly for Bone Temple, it's more focused in that respect. And in that, with Spike hanging out with, or a prisoner of, this is Spinal Tap, Village of the Damned. This is Spinal Damned? Village of the Spinal Tap? Working titles. That shit is some solid tension. Their leader is a complete and total sadistic satanic fuck. Murder, torture, the kid not only doesn't know when a good time to escape would be, but he's a kid, he's scared, it's easy to be like, if you escape, I'll kill you, and, you know, the kid will believe it. That's what you're rooting for in this movie. You're rooting for him to find a way out before he kind of falls into, hey, maybe this is just what life is now. You're rooting for him to escape the possible corruption of his soul. However, as I explained it, I'm sure you're getting that voice in your head that's going, that doesn't sound too original per zombie apocalypse stories and tropes. And you'd be right. I mean, everything I saw in this movie, I have seen in other zombie apocalypse films, shows, whatever. And we're not just talking once somewhere else. It really is pretty standard. Scumbags controlling with murder and fear, check. The far more interesting and also gonna be a little familiar when it comes to zombie apocalypse stories and tropes is Ralph Fiennes' character. You know, the doctor at the Bone Temple. The namesake of the entire film who oddly feels like a support character in the film. He gets a bug up his ass to try to figure out whether or not there is still humanity in the minds of the infected, specifically one of the alphas. He's named Samson. And that to me is the far more interesting angle this movie does play at. I mean, the fact that it took him nearly 3 decades to hypothesize this, that's a little weird. Was it only after Spike put his mom's skull on the tip top of his super skull structure he was able to be like, you know, with that complete, I'm now able to ask other questions. But it's actually a pretty heavy concept. You know, the undead, sure, they're dead. We call them undead because they're technically walking dead, but they are in fact walking dead. There's no bringing them back. In a zombie apocalypse of the Walking Dead, I feel like I'd have an easier time going, yeah, they're dead. Whoever they were is not who they are now. But when it's a virus, and he knows that because he's a doctor, you have to hypothesize whether or not a cure could be found. Can they be cured, or do they have higher brain function? Again, you probably hear that voice in the back of your mind going, that doesn't sound too original when it comes to zombie apocalypse movies or tropes. However, it was still cool. It's kind of the 28 years, well, the 28 franchise, universe, working titles. Danny Boyle's zombie, but not technically zombie apocalypse films. I've always seen them as, funny enough, the next evolution of zombie apocalypse. They're not zombies, they're infected people, but functionally speaking, they are zombies who run after you. That's his scary, more realistic take on the zombie apocalypse. They are a of zombie apocalypse. They're not zombies, they're infected people, but functionally speaking, they are zombies who run after you. That's his scary, more realistic take on the zombie apocalypse. So I saw the Bone Temple as this franchise's way of dealing with zombie apocalypse tropes.
They're not zombies, period, because they're not dead. They're not rotting flesh. They're not. To be a zombie, you have to die first and then come back as the Walking Dead, the living dead. You know, your heart has to stop beating. Basically, that's what it is. Your heart has to stop beating, and you're walking around. That's what vampires are.
In its own way. And it landed with me. It actually worked. More importantly, I was never bored. Never really felt like the movie switched genres entirely halfway through. You know, like I felt 28 years later did. I mean, at a point hanging out with the Village of the Spinal Damned, I did feel like we were getting into torture porn territory. I was like, wow, 2026 really coming out swinging with the torture porn here. And the story with the leader gets a little ridiculous for me, but Ray Fiennes is so good in the film, and every moment with him is an absolute joy. I was trying to find a phrase that didn't age the shit out of me, but such a joy is absolutely what I thought. He's just so good at the job, he makes the whole thing work by the end. I mean, at a point in this movie, the theater was laughing their ass off in terms of how it all went down, because it was so unabashedly badass and fun. I was right there with them. I mean, this movie has grit, style. It mixes some humor in here, but mostly it's Ray Fiennes pulling it off for me. There's something about his dry execution of saying what's on his mind, saying the inner monologue out loud, that's so matter of fact, you can't help but give me a chuckle. No, in the movie, you're like, how do these two stories mix to one film? And then by the end, it does. I'm gonna say 28 years later, The Bone Temple, I thought it was a good time. No alcohol required. For a moment, I totally forgot that it was still January, to be fair. All right, so 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want
28 years later, The Bone Temple is directed by Nia DaCosta and once again written by Alex Garland, and is the second film in this new trilogy, but technically the fourth film in the entire franchise. It's a lot to think about, and it doesn't really matter. So as Spike is inducted into Jimmy Crystal's gang on the mainland, Dr. Kelson makes a discovery that could alter the world. But I also want to give a big thank you to the sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. Most New Year's resolutions usually fail by February. It's really tough to keep those things going. A lot of times you set unrealistic goals for yourself. For me, last year I tried to set a realistic goal for myself. And for me last year, that was my mental health and my physical health. It takes a lot to train yourself to eat a certain amount of calories per day or a certain type of food, and to try to stay on track with that. And as I did, and as I lost weight and saw those numbers go down on the scale, I became much happier and my life improved as a result. I felt more healthy, which is something that therapy encouraged me to do. With BetterHelp, you just fill out a questionnaire and you'll be preferences, their own clinic. BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. So if you know anything about the 28 franchise, essentially there's a virus that spread and it makes everybody into really fast running zombies and makes everybody insane. They're known as the Infected. The word zombie isn't used that much, but they're really terrifying, and it was one of those first franchises that introduced running, fast moving zombies that you really can't escape from, and even a little speck of blood from them is going to turn you. Last year's 28 Years Later was quite good. I really enjoyed that film. I loved seeing Danny Boyle back in that world. This film by Nia DaCosta, I think, is potentially even a little better. It's for sure right there in the middle for me, equal to it. But there's a lot in this film that I loved, and I really especially loved her approach behind the camera. I love how hyperactive and frenetic Danny Boyle is with his 28 Days and Years films. But DaCosta's way of helming this movie is a little more smooth, more fluid. She still uses some like locked on cameras where the camera is actually locked to the actor and they're moving. And we've seen this before in movies, but it's kind of the closest that we get to the hyperactive feel of Boyle's film. She really makes it her own, and she does a really, really good job behind the camera. The scares are effective. The gore is awesome. There's a really great decapitation of sorts that I thought was just, like in the theater, I was like, yeah, that's what I wanted. But any film written by Alex Garland is not just going to sit around and be an action movie or be a horror movie just for the sake of it. There's quite a bit here to ponder about. And a lot of that has to do with Ray Fiennes and his attempts at trying to learn more about the infected and what the nature of the infection is and if there's anything that can be done about it. And his experiments in this film with the alpha are what make this film extremely special for me. I don't want to get into too many details about it because I want you to enjoy it as much as possible, but the back and forth that takes place as he's trying to learn more about specifically the alpha, I thought that was really fascinating and an aspect of a zombie horror movie that I've never really seen before. But let's talk about Spike's encounter with this gang, which was hinted at the end of the last film in a sequence that for some I think was kind of baffling. I thought it was like, whoa, this is like a Power Rangers group or something. Like, what is going on? And I was really intrigued. And if you were thinking that they were going to be silly or out of place, they are horrifying. Jack O'Connell plays the leader of this group, and he is a truly horrific human being. I hesitate to even describe him as a human being. His inclinations towards evil, his complete lack of conscience is astounding. He is a truly hateful person and absolutely fantastic in the movie. I was terrified of him and his little group of cult people, because essentially it is kind of like, what would a cult look like a really small cult that is potentially on the cusp of getting larger. What would that look like in this world? Well, it would probably be a crazy person who's trying to convince a few people that he should be followed and spreading a very murderous intent and doing awful things to people in the name of something that he thinks is going to happen. And it's a type of villain where you're with him for just a few minutes of screen time and you're like, yeah, this guy's gotta go. He's gotta go in a really satisfying way. And then you spend the whole movie just hoping that it's going to give you what you want, because he is such an awful person. He does things to people that are unforgivable and you really loathe him. Like, he's great in the movie. A really terrific villain. One of the better villains I've seen in a horror movie in a while. I would also like to say that this is probably one of, if not the best January horror movie I've ever seen. Over the past few years, I actually think January is being reclaimed. I've seen plenty of really good movies in the theater the past few Januaries, including this month. It's actually come to the point now where I'm strangely looking forward to January movies, because it feels like you're cleansing the award season. You don't have to go to every movie being like, what will this be nominated for? You can just kind of go and have fun. And sometimes it's a disposable time. Maybe you see a okay disaster movie or two and you have a good time with it. But this January and last has been very satisfying so far. And this weekend, I'm going to see the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended editions in theaters, and I would like to make videos for those. I've never reviewed the extended editions, and my reviews of the Lord of the Rings trilogy are very old and not very in-depth at all, and I would love to have more things to say about it, so I am going to try to do the extended edition. I'm excited to see those, and we're also getting these amazing theatrical re-releases, you know, like Regal's doing this thing like every day this month with new movies. And in February, there's all these romance movies that are going to be in theaters. It's a really fun time to go to the movies, and January has been pretty cool so far. This is a really, really fun, good horror movie. I thought it was fantastic. Nia DaCosta did a really great job behind the camera. Garland's writing's great. All the actors are great. The young actor who plays Spike, Alfie Williams, once again, phenomenal. Everyone's really good here. This is the fourth film in the franchise and has remained a really consistent horror franchise. Up until now, I've always said the Scream franchise and the Final Destination franchise are the most consistent horror franchises in regards to quality. But the 28 Days, Years, Weeks, whatever franchise is definitely now becoming up there. And if they do make this next one, which I really hope they do, man, I can't wait to see it. Guys, thank you so much, as always, for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.
Love it or hate it, it was the film that divided horror audiences in 2025, and now the sequel is here. 28 days later, The Bone Temple. This is a post-apocalyptic horror film directed by Nia DaCosta and of course written by Alex Garland. This was shot back to back with 28.
Now this bitch is responsible for getting my channel, my first YouTube channel removed, holding somebody else, and I'm gonna find that other person. This is now the Haunted Hippie. Both of these make copyright complaints about me using their videos in my live stream. You know? And they think that their videos are copyright protected because they so much as make a video, but they're not copyright protected because you have talking head. You're just talking into a microphone on video. You're not copyright protected in any sense. So I refuse to believe, and let me go into the playlist. to refresh this. See, she's gonna go 27 goddamn minutes. And I like Lady Genoveva better because she actually has thoughtful reviews instead of just babbling on like Cody Leach and Haunted Hippie. But a lot of times they say better than the last because everybody else is saying that, so they're just on board with the bandwagon, you know. But I'm gonna try to play both of these two, because these two in particular, they were on my ass about their little reviews, about me using their shit in my live stream, and you know I copy the video URL for the purposes of giving them credit when I post it in the description. Clearly I've already done it, of my live stream. So regardless of what Spooky Astronauts bitch thinks, I'm still going to continue to do it because it's not her property. It's not intellectual property. It's not really hers. It's on YouTube.
Years later from 2025. Thank God, by the way.
Get the fuck over yourself, redhead.
They're releasing these films one after another. Even if it's a year, I will take.
Yes, I will make fun of her accent. I will mock her accent, just like I will happily mock the
that over, you know.
Let me refresh it so I can get the other video in.
Love it or hate it.
I will mock her accent just like I will mock the other one, Haunted Hippie. I will mock her the way she talks.
Or 4 or 5 year sequels we have been getting, and TV shows have been getting, so count your lucky stars if you are a fan. This film takes place right after the events of the last film, where we follow Spike, who is introduced to Sir Jimmy and the gang. Watching people's reactions after the ending of 28 years later was extremely interesting. I actually did a whole video explaining the breakdown theories and what I believe it meant, and I think that a lot of people have actually come around on a second or even third rewatch of 28 years later to understand where this could be going, and I, for one, couldn't be more excited because I absolutely loved the first installment of this series. This is meant to be a trilogy, and tonight we go into the Bone Temple. This film was actually meant to focus on Dr. Ian Kelson, who forms a new relationship with potentially world-changing consequences. He was my favorite part of 28 years later, so I'm so excited to jump back in. If you do not know, the origins of this series is from 28 Days Later, a British post-apocalyptic horror from 2002 that was directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. The movie starred Cillian Murphy, who woke up from a coma realizing that the world has been taken over by a deadly virus. From there,
we do not need a rehash of the first two movies. We don't.
we got 28 weeks later, and now we are in a trilogy of 28 years later, uncovering all of the consequences of what happened so long ago. What is next in this story? You know me, I've avoided the trailers. I've only seen these amazing posters everywhere, and I am so excited to go back into this world. I think a issue a lot of people had with 28 years later was it was so dreamy and strange, and a lot of people were chasing very action-packed scenes, which I believe a lot of it was. I just think the journey was a little bit longer than they had anticipated. But if you go back and watch the original films, they are as strange as the new ones. So I hope it's going to carry through, and I just can't wait. I honestly can't wait. But will this film break the trilogy curse? There are definitely exceptions to the rule, but a trilogy, especially in horror, so I hope it's set up with a fantastic opener. But the middle film is really where we struggle to keep the audience glued at the end and at the start of another story. This should really be the peak of the film, so let's see how exciting it is. I want to see if it's action-packed. The first one was so gory. I really want that. I want it to be as gory as the first one, and I'm really curious to see where they take the characters. Will the Jimmy gang be as terrifying as they seem? Well, there's only one way to find out. Come with me to the local premiere, and I'm going to answer all of those questions spoiler-free and let you know whether it is worth the hype and worth your time. Let's go.
need to see a constant, like, you know, you going to the movie.
Temple, and
Now she's in her car, her shitty car, giving us a review.
and my god, I wish that was longer. I really enjoyed that, and it was, I don't want to say it was different, it was very much a continuation of the first film, which you expect a sequel for a trilogy would be, but it's almost exactly what we expected or what was promised, which isn't a bad thing. I just wanted it to be a little bit longer because the first one was so theatrical. So this movie does take off exactly where we left off. I mean, maybe 5-10 minutes have passed, but you really do need to watch the first one before seeing this movie. It is a direct revisit of this world that they have been world building, and these characters that are very important to the first film, and especially their arcs and understanding who they are and their motivations and their backstories. It's really where it all comes together. And this is where I get to say those magic words. This film is brutal. It's brutal, it's gory, but it's also like 28 Days, all of the 28 Days, it's very true to its core message and meaning or motive itself, which is humans are the real monsters. And all of the films have this throughout, especially the first movie, the original 28 Days Later, and this one following and focusing on the Jimmies definitely shows that, and is a callback to where we saw Jimmy in the first 28 years later. That's why it's really important that you have seen the first one, but it's also fresh in your mind. It will really help you in connecting the dots in this one. They do not explain anything. There is no recaps. This film also has a few UK-isms, British-isms, some moments, especially fun for me as an Australian. How's that? Just some fun little moments that I think really situated into its setting, but also shows the time freeze. And this is something I was really interested in during the first film, how we saw pop culture being taken and changed from almost an alternate timeline where it stopped when the virus began, and how they had taken certain elements like the Teletubbies and changed that, or it's become this kind of lore for them because that's where pop culture ends. And that's something I'm really interested in this series, and that continued through this film. So I was really excited by that. I just love those extra elements and extra layers to at the core, a zombie film, and they build on that. I would say the first one is a lot more soulful, a lot more epic. It's more of an adventure, where this one was very focused on showing a certain side, especially of the Jimmies, and also religion, which I think the first one, more so the trailer kind of promised with all of the scary masks and stuff. It was almost showing this return to pagan rituals, this return to the land, and it did have that in elements, but this one completely focuses on that in a different way, in a Jimmy way. So
yeah, that's what I was saying in my review, is that the first one is kind of like got different plots going on. It's more expansive, where this one's more narrowed down into like really two separate plots. One involving the Alpha potentially being cured of his disease by the Doctor Kelson. And then the other half is basically Spike being involved with the Fingers, that cultist group, and him trying to escape while witnessing how horrible they are. So it's not even about really the infection anymore at this point, minus what they did with the Alpha. So it's a lot more specific, narrowed down to two little niches instead of just a whole thing with trying to be a hunter, trying to survive, trying to, Because you wonder why does Jamie Spike's dad take him on that hunt in the first place? Like, why does he need to hunt? Like, he needs to know how to kill one of those things in case he's ever in a position where he has to survive. But normally you wouldn't take your son out to do that. But they're hunting for more than that. They're looking for supplies, and they're looking for, food. Because there's a few hunters that still try to hunt deer and other game.
Very brutal, lots of blood, lots of gore, lots of carnage. So if you can't handle that, you're not going to handle this. But I found it to be particularly actually quite fun. The way that music is utilized is really interesting. It is a beautiful movie. We have some GoPros again, or that kind of body cam footage attached to some zombies. Very reminiscent of the first film in this trilogy. It's just a more concentrated story in following particular characters. I think it's not as epic, and it could have gone for longer. Honestly, it could have gone for longer. As soon as it kind of hit its peak, it was over, and I just felt like it was short, and I was just getting into it. But I think that's a good sign if I want it to be longer and it's the middle film in a trilogy. That's good. But it definitely had a concise story it wanted to tell in this chapter, and it has made it very succinct. I think that people will have a lot less questions after this film, which is what you want, and it has a really interesting ending to tie it all together, which I was expecting, but maybe not so concise. I haven't seen a middle film for a trilogy, especially a horror trilogy, in a very long time that was able to be successful in its delivery, gripping, it was thrilling, it was gory, and it answered a lot of questions while still leaving me wanting more. So it's successful, definitely. I just don't know if I liked it as much as the first film, because the first film really was all about creating the world and the world building and the characters, and this one relies on your knowledge of that to push the story through. It doesn't really add much lore and greater context to it, so it wasn't as whimsy, I think. A lot of the first one, like the scenes of them running across the bridge and the water, and, the idea of the universe and everything that happens with Spike, so beautiful. And in this film, I felt like it was more tension in that story, but we obviously are aware of a lot more, knowing what the situation is and what we're up against. So as the audience, we can sit back, we know where we are, we know a lot more than the characters this time, and so we're watching it unravel from almost a different point of view. But the performances are always what these films fall back on. They know how to cast these movies, and they always pick a killer cast. Ralph Fiennes will always be my favorite in these movies, and his character is so charming and amazing in this movie. But obviously Jack O'Connell, bless his teeth, who have not only been the star of another hit horror film, but also this one. He is such a good fit for this. He was so chilling, amazing, brutal, and the way he gets to deliver his dialogue without lifting a finger and being so intense, just stunning, absolutely stunning and startling and terrifying. So I really enjoyed it for the performances all round. But the brutality of it all, yeah, if you don't like blood, don't watch this film, because it is full of it. If you did like the first one, or if you still had questions from the first one, definitely check this one out. It is worth your time. It's quite rare to get a succinct trilogy that is as focused as these films, wants to say something sharp and fast, and achieves that. And I think that this film was very direct in its message, talking about the darkest parts of humanity and how it is constructed and about control. It achieved not only that, but it was a very succinct bridge to the third film, which I cannot wait for. I am so glad that we got to this in cinemas. At the start I said we got it, the next year, but it's really 6 months after. So I think it's still waiting to be announced, the third film. And if you watch this movie, you'll know exactly what the third film's about. So again, very straightforward, but very thrilling. I was waiting for one moment in this film. There was a scene and I just could not wait for it to happen. And I was getting so fidgety, and that's when I know it had me in the palm of its hand. There's something so interesting and impressive about a movie that can keep you in the dark during its, first part and then allow you out of the cage and you know more than most characters in the room. It's just a thrilling use of hiding the information and what they reveal and when. And I love the pull and push of that during these films. It's just a really fun way to observe this world, and they have created such a cruel but fascinating world at that. I don't think I like this one as much as the first one, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I really feel like this is an add-on trilogy. I feel like it's a continuation. It's just one long film. I honestly think that this is what The Strangers thought that they were doing, but this is a continuation, so I really don't see them as two different films, but I did prefer the first just because of the soulful nature of it. But a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people thought it was too slow and it wasn't zombie enough, but that's what I love about the 28 Days movies. They are about other things. Their focus isn't just on survival, and sometimes it is, but it's not survival of only the zombies. And that theme goes throughout, and it has not stopped yet. I gave the first film a 7 out of 10, but I actually upped it to an 8 out of 10 the second time I saw it. And I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10 too. For a middle trilogy film, I was very impressed and I love the direction it's going. Somehow a film set 28 years later is able to have some of the same elements as the original, and with the world changing as much as it is, it's quite interesting. Very reflective. For originality, I'd probably give it like a 3, and for scare and gore, I don't think it was quite scary. It was very thrilling and obviously very gory. It just depends if graphic scenes scare you, then you'd probably up this more, but I'd probably give scare like a 5 and gore a 7. That's how I felt about Bone Temple. Let me know if you liked it or you hated it down below in the comments. Let me know how you felt. It is definitely worth the hype.
I'm not gonna do that. You can shut up now. Oh, see, she wants you to be a member. She's at least $4.99 a month. Should I do it? Just to watch her review. You see how shitty that is? Yeah, let's see how many people are going to watch your review now that you've made it. Well, nobody's going to spend $5 on your shit, even $4, just to see your opinion. Like, I would like to hear it, but I don't need to hear it that badly. I can avoid really hearing it, honestly. Go away. I don't really need to hear it. I don't need to add it to my playlist either. So, yeah, you should really not do that if you want people to see your review. That basically is saying that she can afford to do it. Stop prompting me to sign up. I'm not going to sign up. Stop. I want to eventually get on with it, though. I think I've already got the breakfast all day. Let's just move forward, please. Go back up top here. Cutting the Mayo's tape.
So our guest today is Derby-born English actor Jack O'Connell. And it's worth mentioning Derby-born because I do think you very rarely hear Derby accents on this show. And Jack O'Connell is a breath of fresh air in so many different ways. I enjoyed the film and I enjoyed talking to him. But what did you make of that, and what did you make of Bone Temple?
Well, as I told you when we did the Christmas show, I mean, I am a big fan of this. But so this is, it's the second installment in this section of the 28 Days years franchise. The previous 28 years later, which was directed by Danny Boyle, written by Alex Garland, was set amidst the kind of the pop culture rubble of a collapsed society, and it kind of opened with kids watching a video of Teletubbies, and then it ended with Alfie, who is the young kid who was gone to the mainland with his dad, meeting a gang of people who appear in a very extraordinary final sequence, which, as you said, when you came out of it, you couldn't talk to anyone about it because I hadn't seen it yet, and it was just like, what do I do with this? Who fight like Power Rangers and dress like Jimmy Savile, which is where this picks up. So again, script by Alex Garland, directed by Nia DaCosta, who came on our show. She did the rebooted Candyman and the really smart Ibsen update Hedda, which is a version of Hedda Gabler, which is a film I like very much. And Alfie is taken in by the Jimmies. And the Jimmies are a sort of Clockwork Orange style gang of bizarrely attired thugs led by Jack O'Connell. And the word that he used was flamboyant Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal. And the first thing that happens is that to gain entry to the gang, he doesn't have any choice, is that Alfie, young Alfie, has to fight one of the Jimmies. And it's clear that the fight has to be, yes, only one of you is going to win this. So it's really, really brutal. Meanwhile, Dr. Kelson, who is the character played by Ralph Fiennes, has been searching for signs of human consciousness in the infected, particularly in the alpha male who we met before, Samson, played by Chi Lewis Parry, who he manages to sedate with he has darts which have sedatives in them, which make Samson quiet and passive. And then he will sit with him, and he's longing for Samson to show some kind of awareness, which he appears to be doing. Maybe at some point he'll even speak. And as you said in that interview with Jack O'Connell, Danny Boyle had said that this film is about the nature of evil. This was shot back to back with the first film. And I read now that the next one has indeed been greenlit. And there's
a surprise.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you said that at the beginning, didn't you? You said they know already that it's happening. But and that, as per Danny Boyle, will be about the nature of redemption. Well, the redemption hasn't happened yet. We are in the belly of the beast in this, okay? We are right in the heart of darkness. So the key thing is, whereas in the previous films, the scariest things were the creatures were the infected, now we are starting to see a more sympathetic side of them, which actually is something that if you're a zombie movie fan, and I know there's a whole question about infected and zombies, but it is the zombie movie genre. If you look at the George Romero Dead movies, there is this whole thing about starting to accept the zombies as more than just zombies. And of course, Shaun of the Dead, at the end of Shaun of the Dead, they sort of riff on that. They
are not zombies. They are not zombies. They are just infected. They're not zombies. Not zombies.
On that idea of the kind of civilized zombie, the civilizing aspect of it. So this time the real horrors are man-made, and they are once again a sort of product of a rancid cocktail of destroyed pop culture and false religion. And the Jimmies, of course, take their name and their look from a real life monster who, and we sort of arrived at this, we fumbled our way to it when we were talking about the thing before. In the timeline of the film, Jimmy Savile would never have been revealed as the monster that he was, because in the timeline of the film, at the point at which the outbreak happens, none of the revelations have happened, and then society collapses. And so there's a whole thing about culture just took a break, and now there's this alternate timeline. So again, as Jack O'Connell said, they are excelling. They are reveling in the apocalypse, particularly his Jimmy Crystal. Jack O'Connell said, of everyone, he's having the best time. They are thriving. They orchestrate fear. Horribly, the word that they use for what they do is charity. And the word charity has never seemed less charitable than here. Yeah. And at one point, I was thinking, there's a really harrowing film from few years ago called Johnny Mad Dog, which is very different, set in the Franco-Liberian War, but peopled with child soldiers, children in fancy dress committing like appalling atrocities like fairy wings. And you were talking about the tiara, and there is that kind of that real horror. And as with Alex in Clockwork Orange, Jimmy Crystal needs to maintain his place at the top of the pile. And part of this is this idea that he is the son of the devil. And, which is very Manson clan, very Manson family. There's a lot of cult stuff going on in this. And you brought that up, I think, quite correctly with Jack O'Connell. I think that is one of the things that the film is about. It is about cult leadership and the lies involved in cult leadership. And then when one of the followers stumbles upon the bone temple that we met in the first film, the Memento Mori, created by the iodine orange Dr. Kelson, in that clip that we heard, there's the thing about, you think I'm Satan because of the color of my skin and because of the bone temple. So, as with, and I mentioned Ken Russell's The Devils, talking about the previous film, this is to some extent a film about brainwashing. It is about the creation of a cult. It is about a cult leader who demands total subservience of his followers, who sort of know that he's a liar and a charlatan, but have bought into the lie, which I think seems weirdly contemporary at the moment. And all this then comes to a head in a scene which we've talked about a little bit, and it's been sort of, trailered, in which Ralph Fiennes does a set piece, which, if you remember Ralph Fiennes in A Bigger Splash, there's the thing when he does the Mick Jagger routine, the emotional rescue routine, and that was like the most enjoyable scene in the film. The scene here involving Iron Maiden and Ralph Fiennes is jaw-dropping. I mean, you genuinely go, wow. I mean, you had the same feeling about it, right? It was pure cinema.
Yes, and I was glad it was there because it's also very funny.
Yes,
there are a number of points where you will laugh out loud, and I think partly it's because what you talked about Jack O'Connell and Charity. This comes after a particularly grim sequence, which I found very difficult. If I did look away, a lot of Jack O'Connell stuff, I had to look away because it was so gut-churningly awful to watch. So then, coming to this bit was a bit of light relief, but it works, and Ralph Fiennes gives it 100%, and I think it's a brilliant sequence.
He goes for it. That the stuff that you're talking about wincing and looking away. The film is rated 18 for strong, gory, violent injury detail, and as we know nowadays, to get an 18 from the BBFC, you really have to go the length. The BBFC says that the film includes people who've been tied up and gagged, being flayed alive, stabbed, impaled, set on fire, heads ripped off, partially flayed characters seen in the aftermath of strong, gory images throughout, including I mean, it's all there, right? No one's going to come out of this and saying, well, I thought they soft pedaled it a little bit on the thing. But one of the things that's interesting is that an awful lot of the really horrible stuff is to do with implication. It's actually not to do with graphic viscera. It is to do with what you're imagining, and also the themes that the film is dealing with. Because, yes, it is about evil, but it's also about two cultures moving in opposite directions, one of which seems to be going from rage-filled bestiality to something that's perhaps inflected with sympathy, and the other is this kind of cancerous sore of human avarice flourishing in this destroyed world, feeding upon the fact that people are desperately looking for something to believe in, no matter how vile. And what Jack O'Connell's character, Jimmy Crystal, Sir Lord, whatever it is, Jimmy Crystal, is giving them is exactly that. So I think it's a film about the nature of human evil, about the evil that men do, about somebody seeing a destroyed society and exploiting it. And I think that has a very, very clear contemporary political edge, particularly when you consider that the film is about cult leadership. It is about somebody taking on a religion, it happens to be a satanic religion, but taking on a religion and claiming themselves to be the son of, well, not God, the son of Satan, and getting all their followers to believe in all this stuff, even though you know that central character doesn't really believe any of this, but he's just exploiting the chaos around him by sowing more chaos. And I thought the thing moved like a bullet. I thought everyone gave 110%. And I thought Jack O'Connell was terrific. I think Ralph Fiennes is terrific. I think the production design is great. Hilda Gudnadottir does the score, which is very brooding, and there's a lot of menace and there's a lot of evil in there. And at the end of it, I did think, okay, I'd like some redemption now.
Police.
Yes, which is exactly what part 3 is going to be about, obviously. And there's a hint of that at the end, but we'll have to reserve that maybe for future conversations. And thank you to Iron Maiden for allowing their track to get included. And interesting, and of course, you talk about contemporary. We should just say that the only difference being that here, the person who's painted orange is a good guy.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, the orange guy is a good guy. But I said this to you when we were talking at this Christmas show, I said my immediate short review was blimey, yes. And my next bit of it was I can't wait for you to see it. And it sounds to me like it did hit you hard.
Yeah, I haven't seen an 18 for a while, and if I'd had longer with Jack, we would have talked about this. But I mean, I did the charity sequence that we're talking about. There's something about human on human cruelty which is far, far worse than zombie on human cruelty.
Absolutely. And that's the point. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
We already have a brand new 28 years later film, this one titled The Bone Temple. It's part of a trilogy of films in this franchise, this acting as the middle child, the bridge flick to the final installment. And boy, how can you tell? But I'm not going to get into the details here. This is going to be a spoiler-free review with a spoiler-filled one down the road. So if you enjoy the commentary, if you enjoy the review, feel free to sub to the show Adam Does Movies. I'm Adam. I do the movies. Let's do The Bone Temple. You could say I have a bone to pick with Alex Garland. He wrote and directed the last flick. He's back again writing this one. We have a different director, though. This time around, it's directed by Nia DaCosta, who did Candyman and The Marvels. So that tells me she's flexible, she's got some variety, and she's going to utilize both of these qualities when it comes to 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Because much like the tone of the last flick, this one once again is all over the board. And for any newcomers out there, just to quickly gloss over my thoughts on this franchise as a whole, I really enjoy the first 28 installments. As far as the last film that was pretty universally praised by critics, I found myself at odds with. I found the whole thing to be incredibly frustrating to watch. I didn't like the silly, zany, wackadoo tones that would come and go throughout, especially...
Yeah, because in general, you don't like movies. You just rant about what you don't like for 24/7, and well, not 24/7, but you don't talk about what you do like. You just talk about what you don't like.
In that final act, and the whole thing was missing that grounded reality we had with the first two movies, where there felt like there were real people in real situations and not these larger-than-life characters. And so it's even more puzzling that The Bone Temple somehow worked better for me, even though it's even more ridiculous. It's almost embracing it at this point. Alex Garland has decided at some points this is going to be a full-blown satire, and that's pretty much anytime Ralph Fiennes comes on. His character, Dr. Kelson, is still very much interested in making sure these infected folks are comfortable. And in this film, we're going to dive into his history a bit and his budding
He literally only does that to one affected guy.
Romance with that alpha from the last film, you know, the one that's got the dick swinging left and right. He's back, baby. Fan favorite Moose Cock is back in all of its glory, and
it's funny how they keep mentioning the penis just for the algorithm to pay attention and promote the little videos. We all know why he's naked, because in some time in the race, their clothes got ripped off and they didn't bother to get clothes. I mean, he does try to get clothes in the movie. He actually discovers his own nakedness, and then he clothes himself, kind of like Adam in the Bible.
He didn't shy away this time. If you thought to yourself in the last 28 years later, man, this was good, but I really could have used more D. The Bone Temple answers the call. There is at least 50% more of dong on display. Hey, it's called The Bone Temple after all. That is one of two storylines that's going to be running.
He would rather make a funny than actually go into a review, because it's all about just making us laugh. He's trying to entertain us. It's not a real review.
And throughout this thing, you got the doctor stuff.
Don't take it seriously.
And then we have our Jimmy situation. I recently have been watching Seinfeld for like the 50th time. So I got to the episode with the Jimmy. I couldn't help every time these guys talk go, Jimmy's down!
Jimmy's got a brand new set of moves. And that's because they're gonna say Jimmy about 1,000 times. If you thought in the last flick it was egregious how much they yelled out Spike, this film says, hold my Jimmy. When we last saw our little Spike, the Power Rangers arrived, AKA the Jimmies, AKA the Fingers, as they're known in this film, led by Jimmy Crystal. I apologize, Sir Jimmy Crystal, the right hand of the Father himself, Satan. Yeah, this is a good old-fashioned satanic cult, one run by the actor Jack O'Connell, who plays this Jimmy Crystal character. Sir Jimmy Crystal. I gotta tell you, Jack O'Connell is having a ball here, and because of his performance, so am I whenever he's on camera. Just absolutely over the top in the best ways possible. And maybe, for me, that's why I enjoyed myself watching this one far more than the last, because it is now so absurd. It has fully embraced the wackadoo nature of this new franchise. Would I have much preferred them do a more standard tone from the first two films? Absolutely. That's more my jam. But if you like the direction the last one took,
it's not about your preference. Not about your preference.
And you thought, yes, push further into the insane, push further into the gore, into the gross out moments. That's what you're gonna get here. This is a very violent movie at times with some pretty brutal kills. There's also 3 or 4 pretty egregious jump scares, relying entirely on the loud yelling sound effect you often get where a camera slowly moves across the grass and you're just sitting there going, all right, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? Is it gonna, and then it happens. And it gets you anyways. And then you freak out, spilling your soda all over the friend next to you, and he tells you to leave. And you're like, why, man? Why? We're best friends. And he says, I don't even know you, dude. Get the hell out of here. Why do you act like we know each other? And then the next thing you know, you made a huge scene, and you ended up finding yourself in a holding cell for a couple hours. We've all been there. And then you happen, is it gonna, going, all right, when's it gonna happen? Relying entirely on the loud yelling sound effect you often get where a camera slowly moves across the grass and you're just sitting there going, all right, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? Is it gonna, and then it happens. And it gets you anyways. And then you freak out, spilling your soda all over the friend next to you, and he tells you to leave. And you're like, why, man? Why? We're best friends. And he says, I don't even know you, dude. Get the hell out of here. Why do you act like we know each other? And then the next thing you know, you made a huge scene, and you ended up finding yourself in a holding cell for a couple hours. We've all been there.
No, we
all
haven't.
been there. So yeah, the doctor's doing his thing. Spike is getting in. Is it gonna lean sound effect you often get where times with some pretty brutal kills. There's also 3 or 4 pretty egregious jump scares, relying entirely on the loud yelling sound effect you often get where a camera slowly moves across the grass. Soda all over the friend. Oh, you do. Get a huge spin there. Acclimated into the world of So yeah, the doctor's doing his thing. Spike is getting acclimated into the world of the Jimmy, becoming a finger himself. And eventually, as you can probably guess, these two storylines will cross paths. What you may not have been expecting is that none of this is going to conclude in the slightest, leaving you once again perplexed like you probably were at the end of the last movie, where the tone shifts once more. Around the hour mark of this hour 45-ish film, I turned to my fake friend and said, what is this movie even? What are we doing here? What is the story being told? Because it really doesn't seem like there's much structure or narrative throughout. Like, I don't even know what the beginning, middle, and end is of this thing. Spike joins the Jimmies. The Jimmies go to places and terrorize folks. They meet up with the Bone Dude. Movie, narratively wise, for a middle act, it just doesn't feel like it's building to anything grander. This felt like the smallest, more intimate scale of all the films so far. And the many issues I have with this movie, somehow I'm okay with, because man, is it entertaining, man, is it engaging. There's never really a dull moment. And even the moments that you might roll your eyes at and go like, what is this? What am I watching? You're still kind of sitting there giddy, like this is so absurd, and yet I can't look away. That being said, I'm not going to call you a bonehead if you don't like this film. It's definitely not going to work for everyone. It really shouldn't even work for me. In fact, when I left, I said, I don't even know if I like this film. I didn't hate it though. I thought it was at least an entertaining ride, and I guess that's at the end of the day enough. Once more, I'm not happy with the route they went with this new trilogy, but I've at least learned to enjoy the absurdity of it all. Let's briefly touch on the production. This is the prettiest of all the films so far. Gone are the days of a handheld camera. Gone are the days of shooting on an iPhone. Thankfully, gone are the days of some choppy, shitty-looking Matrix-style bullet time that didn't work ever in the last flick. I know those films are amateurish by design. It's supposed to take you into the world more because you're relating to the tech that was out. That said, we're in 2026 now. We have beautiful looking cameras, and that can be seen in this flick. There's also some good tunes in this one. Baby I Was Born to Run is not in here, but we do have some decent music. One of them comes up in the final acts in definitely the most. We do have some tunes in this one. Baby I Was Born to Run is not in here, but we do have some decent music. One of them comes up in the final acts in definitely the most eye-rolling moment of the film, where I was just cringing in my chair thinking, what are we doing here? But again, I will get into all that in the spoiler version. So long story short, I'm not popping a boner over the Bone Temple, but I did enjoy it far more than the last film. I gave you the expectations going into this, okay? A little bit more zany, pretty damn violent at times, some pretty gross out moments that it's hard to watch, a faster pace, utilizing that R rating, under 2 hours, a very fun lead antagonist. Spike isn't called Spike 55 times, he's Jimmy now, baby. And some very pretty visuals add up to a pretty strong movie. One that I think is weakened only by its lack of focus narratively. Characters come and go that you just don't ever see again. The movie wildly changes gears at one point. It's just hard to really understand what the hell Alex Garland's doing with this script. And it's entirely up to him to make it work in the final act. Hopefully he can, and we do get ourselves a inconsistent, if not strong, continuation of those first two films. And I guess I could say bon voyage at this point. I don't have anything else to say on 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Let me know if I've piqued your interest, though, perhaps tickled your fancy even. 2026 has been off to a good start for me in my reviews. I've liked everything I've watched. Maybe the
Stop with the penis puns. Can you stop?
world of cinema is healing. Again, I would encourage you to subscribe to the show. Adam Does Movies. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you watch or listen. You can find.
Bye. I'm gonna continue this later, honestly. Yeah, I'm gonna continue it later because I got some Resident Evil 6 that I want to play. Did I include that last one? Let me go back briefly. Sorry, I just gotta make sure that I include the URL in my description. Oh, I did. Yep, that's it for me for right now. Like and subscribe. I enjoyed the movie for what it was, for what it's worth. You know, didn't get a bone over it, but, you know, fell asleep doing some of it, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, we need to stop the penis puns, if you will, yeah.